Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the second week of Q&As with CSUN President Diane Harrison. I'm Logan Bick, the Sundial Editor-in-Chief. I'm accompanied today by Sundial's campus editor, Orlando Mary Quinn, where we will be discussing CSUN steps forward amidst the coronavirus crisis.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a reminder that this Q&A series with President Harrison will be happening on a weekly basis for the rest of the semester. So if you have any questions that you would like to submit, please feel free to email us or comment down below.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Diane Harrison, the president at CSUN, and I'm happy to be here and try and answer questions. Some questions are unanswerable, but we'll take a stab at it. Thank you.
Cool. So let's get started. President Harrison, in our interview last week, you said there would be more details this week on applying for the CARES Act grant money. Just wanted to get an update on where you are with that process.
Okay, well, I would like to say that we are way far ahead, but we're not. And partly we were hoping we were going to be able to roll out our instructions and the applications and pretty much have this in process. Unfortunately, and you may be following the Department of Education, they keep changing some of their guidelines and as to who is eligible and who isn't. And as part of that means we have to go back and refigure all of our work again based on the new guidelines. So that has kind of put us, as well as other campuses, we're not alone, a little bit behind where we wanted to be. But we're anticipating by next week, here I go again, but by next week that students should be receiving, eligible students should be receiving an email from me outlining how they need to access or apply, do the online application. So my fingers are crossed. Cross your fingers with us that we'll have sufficient guidance that we can truly unroll this, particularly the application process next week.
That's interesting. Do you mind sharing what kind of changes in the guidelines the Department of Education has made?
Well, it gets, it's very political, I might say. They were defining who would be eligible for these funds. And what they wanted was to make only those students who fit into this Section 484, meaning students who had already received federal financial aid, who had completed a FAFSA, that's the federal financial aid form. And we believe that the intent, which wasn't quite so secret, but the intent was to exclude certain groups of students. And in doing so, that meant we had to go, we were not excluding those students originally because the original guidance wasn't that specific. And it really described this, that all students would be eligible. So we made that assumption. So then we had to go back and say, nope, we have to redo our model, if you will, to make sure that students who fit into this Section 484, meaning they had previously received aid or previously completed a FAFSA, were included. Now, all that being said, as you might imagine, and again, I assume you are actively working journalists, which means you also followed the news. And part of that news was that by using that section, they, by default, therefore, excluded several groups of students. One was undocumented or DACA students, and number two was international students. And by using, again, that section, they also excluded even more students beyond undocumented or DACA as well as international. So there's still some questions. I believe there was a meeting yesterday afternoon among financial aid directors about this. So the point of this is we have to get this right. We have to do it according to what the federal government and the Department of Education is telling us that we can do with this particular pot of money. So that's what we're doing, and we have a lot of people working very hard to get our formula right. So we make sure we're doing this correctly.
I have a quick follow-up. In regards to this pot of money, since that money won't necessarily be available towards DACA and international students, do you foresee any sort of package in the future that will be directed towards those students?
Yes, I do. But I think that funding will have to come from us. We will have to generate it. It's not going to be from the feds. If I were a betting person, I would suggest that they will not come back and try and serve undocumented students or international students. The politics at the moment are not in that favor. So that means we're going to have to look at other sources of money, primarily private funds, philanthropic donations, and I know that our advancement group has sent out a wonderful message and in treating all of our alums and friends of the university to contribute to the Medicare Emergency Grant Fund, to contribute to our food pantry, to contribute to anything that we can use on campus at our discretion and that students can access, all of our students can access. So that's really what we're going to be looking toward to try and meet that unfilled need that we know is there. I have to end with this. There is always going to be more need than we have resources to fill. So, you know, even with the federal money, as good as that will be for some of our students, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough, but it will help. And we need everything that we can do to help.
The CSU announced it's suspending the SAT and ACT admission requirements for the 2021 and 2022 academic year. And it said that each campus will determine their supplemental factors used alongside GPA to determine student eligibility. I was wondering what CSUN is planning to use for the determine eligibility for those students.
Okay. Understand that this was the result of the SAT and the ACT basically suspending their testing. So that was going to create a real burden and hardship on students were that to still be required. So the CSU has placed a moratorium, if you will, on SAT, ACT for that year. Now that being said, our admissions office is still finalizing which of these factors that we're going to use here at Northridge. But I do want to give you some examples of those. So the GPA in those A through G courses, another factor might be the actual number of A through G courses that a student completed. What kind of educational programs did a applicant or a student participate in, whether that's the AVID program or Upward Bound, TRIO, some of those kinds of things. We might look at work information. How many hours a week did a student work? We look at veteran status or military dependent. We have relationships that exist already with several of our local community college where we give them preference for admission over others. That would be a factor. Another thing would be any kind of extracurricular activities. You know, what kinds of clubs or organizations did the applicant participate in? Did they hold a leadership role in any of these clubs or organizations? And then the parents or guardians' educational level, ranging from didn't finish high school to college. So you can see where there really are many other factors that we can use besides SAT and ACT to look at students who are applying.
Another question. What are your thoughts on Cal State University Fullerton announcing their plans to move to virtual learning in the fall? Given that this is the first CSU campus to announce these such plans, I know a lot of CSUN students are wondering if we're going to follow that lead.
Okay, well, I will say first start out by telling you what was relayed to me. The the Fullerton announcement was really part of a town hall meeting. And if you go back and look at the actual YouTube of it, you'll see they didn't say, yes, definitely, this is what we're doing. They said, this is what we're planning. This is part of our planning. And I would tell you that probably every other Cal State is in that same boat exactly, that is part of our planning as well. We're looking at, as I told you last time, I think, we're looking at many different models and trying to figure out what's going to work best for this campus. Everything from starting out virtually, maybe keeping large class sizes all online for the fall, taking smaller classes, possibly dividing them in where some students come in a couple of days, some students watch it online and then you switch. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting models, but the point is that whatever we decide, and we probably, again, will not make a firm decision until at least May 15th or shortly thereafter. And we will base it on the best science and data that is available. What is the public health department telling us? What is the mayor telling us? What is the governor telling us? As well as what is it that we can do? And everybody wants us to be back as normal as quickly as possible. But as you both know, that may take a little bit longer than everyone would like. But we are thinking of all different kinds of models and models that will be hopefully in the best interest of our students.
So next question, in an interview with Higher Ed Source, you gave a worst case scenario projection of a 20% drop in enrollment in the fall if face-to-face instruction didn't return. We just wanted to know what data that projection was based off of.
Okay, so when you do planning, it is best practice actually to do kind of best case, worst case. In our planning, we're doing bad, very bad, very, very, very bad. So that, back to your question about where the 20% come from, that's just an outside figure that has been evolving from many different discussions nationally. Do I think that's going to be us? I hope not. But when you're planning, you have to plan for the worst case, and then you work backwards from there. And anything better than that is actually good news, and you can deal with it. Planning is an interesting process. That's all I can tell you. But you have to do it. And when I think part of your question was, what is a more realistic scenario? We don't know what's realistic. 20% could be realistic. Then again, 0 could be realistic. 5%, 10%, we don't know. We're doing everything that we can to try and get a read, if you will, on how many students are coming back and how many new students are going to enroll. And we won't know that until a little bit later in May, after the deadline has passed. What we know right now is that our transfer student intent to enroll is up. That's great news. That's really good news. Our freshman is not quite where it was last year.
So I just had a quick question. With the 20% projection, I know that's coming from sort of national ideas and from experts and stuff. Was any of that data directed towards CSUN specifically?
No. And usually when you're doing scenarios or modeling out, you try to use the best data that you have available to you, the current data, which we have some of, and then you have to use some of your history. But this is not, what happened last year may or may not give us an accurate projection of what's going to happen this year, because guess what? A pandemic entered the equation. So there's a lot of unknowns. And that's why we use I probably have at least 4 different model scenarios. It's a way to anticipate. Now, under a worst case scenario, clearly we're going to be in budgetary hurt, serious budgetary hurt. How would you deal with $100 million reduction in our budget? Well, we go back to our experts. We have a lot of great people on campus in finance and administration and budgeting who help us plan. They run the numbers, they run the scenarios. We have already instituted a hiring chill. That's what we're calling it, a hiring chill. We're looking at limiting any non-essential purchases. Maybe we don't need to do that right now. Maybe we put that off. We have deferred, unfortunately, some of our deferred maintenance projects that we were going to do. Housing, for example, every summer with their budget, they set aside money so they can refurbish and refresh the various residence halls, and they sort of rotate around. So the ones that were up for this summer to be refreshed probably will not be. And that's not a sustainable model. Think about it, guys. You know, if you're going to move into a dorm, you don't want it to be ratty. You want it to be nice. And that's what we want. So you can't defer refreshment and refurbishing very long. But for this year, we are. And hopefully, you know, this will even out into the future. So we're optimistic, but we're also trying to be smart and do things that we can do right now to help potential devastating revenue declines.
Do you know the plans for the USU and some of that step? Because that is a big project in the future. So
yeah, you know, I know their plans. I know they are looking at their plans right now as we speak. But clearly, they're going to have to rethink and relook at that project, which is too bad. I mean, is there anything here that isn't too bad? No. But is it catastrophic? Will we, you know, forever be harmed and damaged that we didn't start that project this year? Probably not. Would it be harmful in the long run if we never get to do it? Yes. Yes. So I think I sort of look at all of these things as we're postponing or delaying some things that we will eventually get to, but just not right now.
I wanted to say thank you for joining us again today. I appreciate you taking the time and addressing the campus. So thank you.
Well, thank you all for doing this too. Appreciate it.